Welcome back to the deep dive. This is where we try to cut through all that noise and, really get to the core of some of the world's biggest challenges. And today we are tackling, well, maybe the ultimate governance challenge right now, artificial intelligence. I mean, since things like ChatGPT burst onto the scene, maybe 3 years ago, the speed has been kind of breathtaking. It's created this huge amount of concern and, frankly, just an overload of information. It feels almost impossible sometimes to keep up with the tech, let alone how anyone's supposed to, govern it.
Yeah, that speed, that exponential curve, it's finally pushed global institutions past just talking about it. They're actually starting to build things now. Our sources for this deep dive take us right inside a pretty significant meeting at the UN, specifically the Security Council. And this wasn't just theoretical. Leaders were formally grappling with AI, acknowledging it's not some far-off thing anymore. It's an immediate factor in global peace and security, like right now.
Okay, so our mission for you today is to cut through that often dense UN language. We want you to come away with a really clear picture of the actual governance structures the UN is proposing now, and crucially, what risks world leaders have officially put on the table as needing, well, immediate attention. Guardrails. Okay, let's dig into this. So, right at the heart of this whole thing, there's this tension, right? This massive potential AI has versus the immediate dangers. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, he really framed it at the start. He told the council, look, the question isn't if AI will impact peace and security. It's already doing that. The question is how we shape it.
And that framing is so important. It's basically saying, okay, AI is here. It's a tool. It doesn't have intent on its own. It can be used for good. And leaders were quick to point that out. They talked about some really concrete potential benefits.
Like what specifically?
Well, things like AI strengthening conflict prevention. Maybe anticipating big crises like food shortages or mass displacement, automating dangerous work like demining operations, even helping spot potential violence outbreaks before they really explode.
Okay, yeah, that does sound like a powerful toolkit for, humanitarian work strategy. But if that's the promise, the feeling in the room reading these sources seems to be dominated by the flip side, the peril. The risk of chaos, especially through weaponization.
Exactly. Guterres himself warned about that AI being weaponized if we don't put guardrails in place. And, the sources really show that military applications are top of mind because the stakes are just so high there.
And we're not just talking about, like, Hollywood sci-fi robots, are we?
No, not primarily. It's more subtle, but maybe more dangerous in the short term. The British Deputy PM, David Lammy, he acknowledged the upside. AI offering ultra-accurate real-time logistics, maybe super advanced early warning systems. Useful stuff.
But there's always a but.
Always. He immediately pointed to the specific dangers in armed conflict, and he named 3 things. First, the risk of miscalculation. An automated system making a call a human wouldn't. Second, the potential for unintended escalations spinning out from that mistake.
Okay.
And third, something maybe more immediate and lower tech, in a way. AI chatbots being deliberately used to stir conflict, to just pump out disinformation and hate speech at a scale and speed we've never seen.
Right, that speed factor again. If AI just accelerates everything, conflict included, how does slow-moving human policy even stand a chance? Feels like a paradox.
It is a paradox.
Yeah.
And that leads straight into the next big theme that came out of this meeting, the absolute necessity of human control, human agency. What's fascinating here is how fast the conversation pivots from the tech itself to, well, this fundamental principle of keeping humans in charge.
So who was making that point strongly?
Sierra Leone's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Timothy Kaba. He was very clear. He urged the council to push for global best practices, for safeguards to retain human agency, especially in military uses. The whole point is ensuring whatever AI does aligns with international law, particularly humanitarian law, which, basically means a human has to be the one to make the critical decision. Pull the trigger, sign off.
Okay, so guardrail number 1. Keep the human in the loop. A break against the machine running wild.
That seems to be the core agreement, yes. And, while the Security Council is focused on that immediate stability military information, it's worth remembering that outside that room, experts are sounding even louder alarms.
Right, about the more extreme stuff, the existential risks.
Exactly. Things like AI potentially being used to engineer pandemics, or massive deepfake campaigns designed to completely destabilize countries.
Or the classic sci-fi nightmare, right? Rogue AI is just going off the rails beyond our control.
Precisely. And those huge, almost unthinkable risks, they make the UN's job look incredibly daunting. They're trying to lay the basic foundation for governance. While some people are warning the whole building might collapse later, under pressure for more advanced AI.
It sounds overwhelming. But like you said, they are moving, taking concrete steps. We're actually seeing structures being built, not just papers being written. And this is where it gets really interesting, organizationally speaking. The UN is actually setting up a new architecture.
Yeah, this is genuinely a big deal. The General Assembly passed a resolution. It's setting up two main bodies to handle this whole AI governance thing. It kind of mirrors how they've tackled other huge global challenges before.
Okay, what are they?
So body number one is called the Global Dialogue on AI Governance. You can think of it as the forum.
The talking shop.
Kind of, yeah. It's the political space where governments, tech companies, academics, civil society, the stakeholders come together. They discuss cooperation, try to find solutions, and let's be real, probably jockey for influence quite a bit.
Is it actually happening?
It is. The sources say Guterres officially launched it just recently, and it's already got dates in the diary meeting in Geneva next year, New York in 2027. So the signal there is this isn't a one-off conference. The UN's committing to an ongoing process, giving it real institutional weight.
Okay, that's the forum. What's body number two?
This one might be even more crucial for the actual policy nuts and bolts, the Independent Scientific Panel of Experts.
Right.
They're recruiting for it right now, looking for about 40 experts. And significantly, the setup requires two co-chairs, one from a developed nation, one from a developing nation. That's built into the structure.
Interesting. Why is that significant?
Well, representation, for one. But also, the comparison the sources make is really telling. They explicitly compare this AI panel to the UN's climate change panel, the IPCC.
Ah, the body that provides the science for the big COP climate meetings.
Exactly. So the idea is this panel will provide the objective, science-based foundation for AI policy, hopefully cutting through some of the political spin.
That comparison alone says a lot. It puts AI governance right up there with climate change in terms of global scale and urgency.
Absolutely. And that exact sentiment was echoed really powerfully by the Greek Prime Minister, Kyriakos Mitsotakis. He basically challenged the Security Council directly. He said, the council needs to rise to the occasion, just like it did historically with nuclear weapons or peacekeeping. Now, he said, it has to rise to govern AI.
Wow. That's drawing a direct line to some heavy historical precedents, nuclear weapons. But, okay, if the military challenge is about control and escalation, there's another huge divide emerging, isn't there? The economic one. Who actually benefits from this tech versus who gets left behind?
Yeah, if we zoom out and connect this to the bigger picture, establishing these UN bodies isn't just about stopping wars or misinformation. It's also fundamentally about trying to prevent a massive explosion in global inequality.
The sources talk about this digital divide getting worse, but they use a stronger phrase, too.
They do. The Somalian president, Hassan Sheikh Mohammed, he used a really potent term, digital colonialism.
Digital colonialism, what does that mean in this context?
His point was that AI must be a tool for everyone, for collective progress, not just another way for wealthy nations or big tech companies to dominate. Think about it. If regions like Africa largely lack their own regulations for AI, what happens?
Western tech companies, Chinese tech companies, they just roll out their products and their standards become the default.
Precisely. Their standards become the de facto rules on the ground. It's like colonizing the digital space without ever sending troops. It shapes economies, societies, everything, based on external priorities.
That really raises the stakes, and there's actual data showing how big this regulatory gap already is.
Yeah, Algeria's foreign minister, Ahmed Attaf, provided a stark number. He said only 10 out of the 55 members of the African Union currently have the necessary IT regulations in place to even start grappling with AI governance.
10 out of 55.
10 out of 55, that's a huge gap.
Yeah.
A massive legislative deficit across a whole continent.
So you've got dozens of nations essentially operating without their own framework, which really hits their, what was the term, digital sovereignty.
Exactly. They risk losing the ability to shape this incredibly powerful technology or its rules in ways that actually benefit their own people. They just become consumers or maybe data sources for systems built elsewhere.
It really highlights the bind the UN is in. These new bodies, especially the scientific panel with its co-chairs, they aim for inclusion.
Right. They're trying to build in that representation from developing nations.
But the process itself, UN processes, are inherently slow. Meanwhile, the tech is just racing ahead, potentially leaving much of the world further behind.
That's the core tension. And it leads us right into, the necessary dose of realism, maybe skepticism, about these new UN structures.
Yeah, Isabella Wilkinson from Chatham House, she kind of summed it up. She acknowledged setting up these bodies is a symbolic triumph and maybe the most globally inclusive approach you could realistically get through the UN. But she immediately pointed out the practical problem. They look mostly powerless. Why? Because you have the UN's, quote, lumbering administration trying to regulate tech that moves at lightning speed.
It's a fundamental mismatch. Slow, inclusive architecture versus incredibly fast, disruptive technology.
And that friction is amplified because you have people inside the tech world saying we can't wait.
Exactly. This is where it gets really pointed. You have influential experts, we're talking senior people from OpenAI, Google's DeepMind, Anthropic, the big players, basically saying the UN route is too slow.
What are they proposing instead?
They're calling for governments to effectively bypass the long-form discussions, at least for the most urgent stuff. They want internationally binding agreements on AI red lines agreed upon, ideally by the end of next year.
Wow, that's a radically faster timeline. Binding agreements, so like treaties.
Essentially, yes. They're not asking for rules on everything AI can do. That would be impossible right now. They're saying, let's identify the absolute worst case, most unacceptable risks, the existential threats, and agree on minimum guardrails, legally binding ones, to prevent those right now.
And they're pointing to historical examples for this.
They are. They say, look, we've done this before. We have treaties banning nuclear testing, treaties banning biological weapons, treaties protecting the high seas. These are internationally agreed limits on the most dangerous human activities.
So the argument is, if AI poses risks on that scale, uncontrolled military AI, engineered pandemics, why are we waiting for a UN forum to meet in 2027? Why not draw those red lines now?
It really puts the choice starkly to world leaders, doesn't it? Do you prioritize the slow, inclusive, but perhaps less potent UN approach to make sure everyone's voice is heard?
Or do you prioritize speed and enforcement through binding treaties, likely driven by the major tech and military powers, to tackle the immediate dangers faster?
That right there feels like the central dilemma in global AI governance today.
So what does this all mean? Well, we've clearly seen the global conversation shift gears. We've moved past just, general anxiety about AI. Now we're seeing concrete governance structures being built, even if they have clear challenges. And the top priorities are undeniable. Preventing military miscalculation and escalation, and tackling that growing digital divide, that risk of digital colonialism. The era of just debating AI is over. The era of trying to govern it, however imperfectly, has definitely begun.
Which leaves you, the listener, with maybe one final thing to chew on.
Uh,
Given that these tech insiders are pushing so hard for binding treaties, comparing the urgency to things like banning nuclear or biological weapons, what could realistically be the AI equivalent of that? What's the single minimum guardrail, that red line, that the world might actually agree on by the end of next year to head off the absolute worst risks? What level of human control would you insist on no matter what? Something to think about.